And joining us now are Clarke Cooper. He is Executive Director of the Log Cabin Republicans, and he comes to us from Washington, D.C. And Clarke, as I welcome you to the program tonight, you are dealing with a Canadian audience here who may not know who the Log Cabin Republicans are, so why don't we start by having you tell us who you guys are?
Sure. Well, the one-sentence answer is the Log Cabin Republicans were the gay and lesbian auxiliary of the Republican Party. That might seem anathema to some of your viewers that the U.S. Conservative Party has such an auxiliary, but we do exist, and we've actually been around for quite a while.
Do you feel welcomed in the Republican Party?
I do, and I can honestly say I probably am more welcome than any of my predecessors. I can give several anecdotes, but the one that's probably the most, that stands out the most, was back in 1996 during the presidential election cycle. Bob Dole's campaign initially returned a campaign donation to our organization. That's not the environment we're operating in now. In fact, the 17 congressional candidates we endorsed this election cycle, all of them sought out our endorsement. All of them sought out campaign funding, assistance, and sweat equity from our organization. But in 2010, I'm not in the position of trying to beg or shop around our endorsement. People need to earn it before they get it from us. They need to be pro-equality conservatives on record, not only through voting or legislative initiatives, but also through their public statements, and should be proud of our endorsement.
Okay, in which case let's focus on Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which is a policy that relates to your military that has been many years in the making and is at a kind of a crucial point right now in its history. If you would, just for starters, give us the sort of 30-second history lesson here on where Don't Ask, Don't Tell came from.
Sure. 17 years ago, when Clinton first started his first term of his administration, President Bill Clinton was looking for a way to, for a compromise essentially toward open service. In retrospect, it actually has turned out to be a disaster. There have been about 14,000 service personnel, men and women, who've been discharged under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Prior to 1993, anyone entering service either as an enlistee or a commissioned officer was asked the question, are you a homosexual or participate in homosexual acts? And essentially there was no witch hunts. Unfortunately, Don't Ask, Don't Tell, the intent, as former Secretary of State Colin Powell, who was then chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said, the intent of Don't Ask, Don't Tell was for service personnel to live their lives privately, but while in uniform, be in compliance with the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and essentially have a separation of their private life and their official military life. That's not how it worked out. Unfortunately, Don't Ask, Don't Tell, again, became a vehicle for witch hunts and removal of people, not based on merit or performance, but just based on their sexual orientation. So fast forward to 2010, there's several things happening. There is a legislative process in our Congress right now, the Defense Authorization Bill. It's an annual bill. There's currently an amendment in the House version, and there's also an amendment in the Senate version for repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, repeal of the statute or the law. And then there's the judicial process, which you were asking me about, and that's a case that Log Cabin Republicans filed in 2004. It did not get a trial date until 2010, partly because the judge that was on the bench was elderly and often ill. So it took the current judge to bring it to court. We actually won our ruling and on the finding that it was against the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution. And the two counts were the Don't Ask, Don't Tell statute violates free speech or First Amendment rights, and it's also in violation of due process or Fifth Amendment rights. And so that ruling was in our favor. An injunction on the statute was issued by Judge Phillips October 12th. Oddly enough, I just happened to be on active duty. I'm a reservist. I'm an Army Reserve captain, and just as luck would have it, I was on active duty for several weeks for war games. When the injunction came down, the response or comments that I heard in the field were very insignificant. In fact, that's what was significant. No one cared. It was almost like a giant shoulder shrug of who cares, big deal, which is what we've been saying all along, is that this arcane policy has passed its time. Unfortunately, President Obama and his Justice Ministry have fought this, and they fought it in court, and they're fighting it in the appeals process.
Well, we should clarify this, though. Clarke, we should clarify this because the president has said it is his one of his top priorities to get rid of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So he's on your side on this, but he also feels, I guess, some kind of traditional obligation to appeal anything that his Justice Department loses in court, right? So that's why he's going against you now?
Not exactly, Steve. And this is something that I've actually discussed with the president prior to Election Day. I met with him, and one of the things he raised was votes in the Senate, and I reminded him that we had the votes in the Senate prior to adjournment, but there was not some cooperation on some non-repeal related matters on the defense bill that caused this to be protracted or delayed. I did indicate to White House staff that, from when I was in the Bush government, that if something truly was a priority of the president, it was known on Capitol Hill. There still is not evidence on Capitol Hill of a White House push or priority for this legislation, for it to be taken care of through the legislative process. And so, I mean, I gently did remind him of that.
I appreciate your position on that, but the world has changed since you had that conversation, and obviously it is a more Republican legislature right now on Capitol Hill. So if you were not able, when the Democrats controlled the administration and both houses of Congress, to get this through in terms of a legislative solution, do you think the cause has been set back, ironically, because there are more Republicans going to be up on the Hill once the new Congress takes over?
Actually, no, and it's interesting you asked that question. Several things have changed, other than the political dynamic of the majorities that my organization helped put in office this week. Several things have happened. The elections are over, and there are a number of Republicans in the Senate, because again, the focus here is on the Senate right now. The House already passed their version of repeal in the defense authorization bill. The Senate has yet to debate it and do that. There were a number of senators that had indicated to me and to my colleagues within the party and within the Log Cabin Auxiliary that they would be supportive of repeal closer to the ministerial report that's going to come out, Secretary Robert Gates mandated in March, and that's due December 1. Again, we made the point that why wait for a review that's actually talking about implementation of open service, but that said, it's almost done. There's been some positive raw data that has come from defense, from the defense ministry, stating that open service is not an issue, should be implemented. So we have that on our side. Plus the actual political environment or tenor around Election Day is gone. It's over. The elections are done. So if there are any parochial concerns a particular member or senator might have had prior to November 2nd, that's no longer an issue. So I do believe that we may actually have an opportunity to not only secure the votes that we had prior to Election Day, but gain some additional Republican senators in support of repeal. In fact, when we're done having this conversation, I'm going over to the Capitol to meet with just one of those members who we're doing follow-up with.
Okay, this is a bit of a two-track process insofar as there's a political track, which you've just described to us, and then there's also the judicial track. Last month, you got a good decision, in your view, out of that one judge who overruled Don't Ask, Don't Tell. My question is, I just want to be clear on that part of it, because I thought there was a provision in that decision which allowed the position to stand until there were further negotiations worked out. Can you clarify that for us?
Sure. The ruling was to essentially suspend the statute without striking it, and that's where the injunction came from. And Judge Phillips said, her response to justice, and we'll step back one step back. The justice attorneys for the United States said, well, we'll look at a tight parameter of protection, and it will be service personnel or service members in California. That's where the case took place. That's where it was filed, who are Log Cabin Republican members. Now, to be fair, we do have members of Log Cabin Republicans who are in uniform, who live in California or are assigned to military bases in California, but that would have been ridiculous parameter. So the injunction actually was much broader, and she said that's wherever the stars and stripes may fly. And anybody that serves in the American military knows that the sun does not set on the stars and stripes. That there's military basing around the globe for our campaigns as well as peacekeeping operations. We participate under UN mandates. So that is where the crux of the back and forth came, was on that piece on the injunction. And then the stay, which was sought in an appellate court by justice, was to say, no, this isn't good enough. Don't ask, don't tell, as a statute, is the law of the land, and it will remain so. So we had an 8-day period here in the United States where military personnel like myself could serve openly. For about 8 days, there was no threat or specter of discharge, and for about 8 days, recruitment offices, military recruitment offices, were accepting gays and lesbians to sign up, to enlist, or take commissions as officers. So we had a window there, and we like to remind on the political side that during that 8-day period, nothing happened. Nothing horrible happened. If anything, it showed that how much of a non-issue open service is or can be.
Let me follow up with a bit of a personal question, if I might. You've told us a couple of times you are a military man. What would it mean to you personally to have an end to this thing?
Well, personally, I've actually benefited from not having been discharged. I've been fortunate to serve in campaigns and under commands that have not processed the discharge, and that's an example of how bad and arbitrary the statute is. There are many personnel I'm aware of who've not been discharged, but it shouldn't be up to the good graces of a commander. So for me, having it removed removes that threat or specter. It also, I think, allows me to make a case for recruitment. There are a number of people I know who are very well qualified to be serving in the Army, Marines, Navy, or Air Force, and they've said that they would once it was open service. So I will be cashing those chits immediately. As soon as we have open service, I'll be walking a lot of folks down to a recruitment station.
Well, that sort of follows up to my next question, which is what would it mean to the defense of the United States or the ability of the United States to prosecute wars, which it believes it has to do, if Don't Ask, Don't Tell were no longer around?
Sure. Well, I mentioned earlier about, we have 2 active campaigns right now, and both of them, Canada actually was an active participant in, and Prime Minister Harper has had defense forces involved and engaged in Iraq and Afghanistan. But we also have peacekeeping obligations from, that have come from UN mandates or UN Security Council mandates. We also have humanitarian missions throughout the world. So total that all up. There's certainly an ongoing need for qualified, capable defense personnel or service personnel throughout the globe. And if we are going to meet those needs in a global environment at a time where U.S. Interests abroad are extensive, then yes, we do need open service.
Clarke, I haven't asked you this directly, and maybe I should just to take any mystery out of the air, but are you in fact a gay man?
Yes, I am,
Okay.
and it's been no secret. I was out during the Bush administration, so I know it's a Canadian audience, but everyone in Washington has known that for quite a while.
Okay, so the question, I mean, I'm not asking just for prurient interest. I'm asking because obviously for hundreds of years, the United States military's official position has been people like you are a disruption to their ability to get the job done. You've been in uniform. You're out of the closet. You want to give us a comment on whether you think you've been a detriment to the U.S. military in terms of its ability to get the job done?
Absolutely not. I mean, I'm sure on a policy level, I've probably been a pain or a thorn under someone's saddle over, at a ministerial level. But at an operational level or a tactical level, personnel that I've served with will tell you that that's not been the case. My NCOIC, my senior enlisted sergeant, my first sergeant in Iraq, if he was here, he would tell you that that was not an issue, and that he respected me and we served honorably together, and he would go to war with me again.
And no one's complained about it?
Not to my face. No one's complained about it. But again, if they were, I'm sure I'd be aware of it. And the one thing that I have faith with the U.S. military is that historically we're able to racially integrate the services, and we were able to, bring the sexes together, integrate in the 1970s. I have said to Secretary Gates' team, the Ham Commission, General Carter Ham's Commission, and I've said to members of Congress in the House and the Senate that what we're looking for with open service is not a pat on the back or approval. We're looking for the ability to be able to serve like everyone else. Judge us on our merit and our capabilities, not on our orientation. So what I mean by that is, even today, there are personal feelings that service personnel may have against someone of a different sex or race. I have served under a female command before, and I've heard ugly, misogynist things said about that commander. At the end of the day, however, those subordinates who said ugly things about her in private saluted and followed orders. So if somebody has something inappropriate or nasty to say about Captain Cooper, as long as they salute me and follow orders and are subordinate, I can't legislate feelings and I can't mandate feelings. But laws, statutes, and regulations can provide for a cohesive operational environment.
Understood. Captain Cooper, thank you very much for joining us on TVO tonight. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Steve.